Hello, everybody.
Hello.
Oh my goodness, it's been pretty much a month since we sat down to last do this.
Yeah, no, I mean, the recap was even longer, but yeah, that was when we finished everything, guys.
Yeah,
We made it to the end of this entire story.
we have. So full spoilers for this one.
Yeah, full spoilers.
But welcome to the episode 4 post-edit recap.
Yeah, welcome. So yeah, if you go in the comments and you're like, but you spoiled this thing in episode 6, well, guess what?
It's your own damn
It's
fault.
on you.
Uh-huh.
Be a responsible consumer of goods, sir. Or
Wow.
madam. Or other. Welcome to the video.
Welcome to the video.
Anyway, so that was episode 4. That was a bit of an emotional ending, if I say so myself.
Yeah, this man was barely containing himself.
I haven't actually listened to my voice, especially at the end in the first tea party, which, you know, is kind of the climax of the entire first 4 episodes. I haven't actually listened to it yet, but I will tell you right now that I had been thinking about the scene, the fight between Battler and Beatrice, for like the entire playthrough, praying to all that is good and holy that I would not fuck up that scene, because to me that is like the most important scene in the entirety of the first half of this story, and I hope I did okay.
Yeah, it was pretty
good.
good. I think I can agree with you. It's probably one of the most significant things to understanding the story. Mm-hmm. I will say, in terms of your performance, though, one of the funniest things for me is this one moment at the end in the second tea party where they describe Byrne as being like a cat, and you just pack up laughing, and I'm like, what is this man going on?
I know.
Because clearly you'd been holding yourself together for so long that something as simple as calling Byrne a cat just made you lose it.
Made me go fucking nuts. Yeah, I know. It's wonderful because she may be in fact a cat. It's great.
The thing is, in my head, I don't think that was ever like really a question in my head that like Byrne.
She's got a tail.
Yeah,
and everything.
She has the tails. She's got the cat-like attitude. I never of course.
She likes plum tea. Yeah,
This early in the story, I hadn't really.
You weren't thinking
pinged
about
on
that
her
way.
being like a cat.
Yeah.
But the line was just so ordinary to me that when you started laughing at it, I'm like, what the fuck is wrong with this man?
Well, there are definitely a lot of lines like that throughout the first 4 episodes where they just outright tell you. Have we talked about the EP1 line? I'm gonna catch the culprit by his neck.
Yeah.
And Butler literally grabs him by the neck. I hope we have talked about that, because that's definitely one of my favorite. It was one of the lines that almost broke me going through the first 4 episodes. But anyway, we should talk about episode 4.
I don't think the line broke you. It was me saying Sir Cannon's the culprit.
Oh yeah, no.
And you were like, probably.
Probably. But yeah, sorry, episode 4. Episode 4 is a pretty crazy episode, honestly. We jump around a lot. There's some weird pacing. And this was the episode that also kind of made you care, which is wonderful. Talk about that?
I've spent ages trying to figure out like quite what it was, because there was just particularly towards the end of Angie's story, when we were getting to the scene where she's torn apart by hot pincers and turns into Angie Burger. Like, there was one of the first scenes that I was like, man, I actually care about what's going on here. And, you know, I already was aware that I was becoming invested in Angie's story, but it was like one of the first moments I was like, shit, I actually care. What the fuck? How did this happen? I'm still a little confused as to how the story pulled it off. And even in the recap, I was like in editing rather, I was still not following quite what it was that I picked up on. I think probably the main thing is that Angie's story is just very simple and relatable for someone of around our age. Particularly with, like, you know, the whole experiences in high school thing. We were talking on the Rikenjima podcast, which, wonderful, you should go check that out.
Yeah, it's out right now.
Yeah, Q Griffin was talking to us about how he kind of found Angie's story really challenging because he has really bad experiences with high school, and for me it's the opposite. High school was a fantastic experience for me. I think perhaps probably seeing someone on the other end of that spectrum was just a bit challenging for me. You know, it's not like it's untapped field of coverage in, you know, media, but I think particularly how in your face it was in this. made it very easy to kind of get a defensive attitude over what was going on.
Yeah, I mean, for me, I don't think I've been as affected by Angie as you were. Certainly, it took me the complete way through the reread for me to really get Angie as a character. But I think that definitely that scene that you described where she's torn to pieces and she's like, it's me, it's your sister, like, I'm waiting for you to come home. For me, the thing that really made that scene sing for me originally was just how, like, pushed around Angie is by everyone and everything, her entire circumstance. And for me, that scene is very much a product of the witches manipulating her, Lumperdalter and Burn specifically. So for me, just like watching someone who, you know, at the beginning of the episode, she's framed as like, I'm going to help you, I'm going to be a very helpful force. And like, we do learn things, you know, through what she's experienced, but like her main function as a plot device by the end of the episode is to try and make Battler hate Beatrice again. Yeah. Because that's very much tied. Angie's appearance and the way that she exits the story in episode 4 is very much tied to the Voyager Witch's desire to keep the game going. Because it's fun and it's great to watch two people fight. And it's just when, you know, Battler's about to figure out that, oh, maybe this should be a conversation, or maybe like this should be something that I treat Beatrice as an equal in. I think he's even saying at the start of the episode, like, oh, we're just getting to the murders, this is the fun part. Like, yeah, his attitude has changed significantly. But yeah, the whole point of Angie, she's very much a tragic character, and that her whole role in the story is to push Battler away from that, and that very much is successful.
Yeah, and we also don't really get to see Angie actually help much in terms of playing the game.
Yep.
Like, even if she, you know, does aid and suggest some moves, like, off-screen, per se, her only real role is flashing back to Maria's story, and then that bit at the end, as you say.
Yep. She doesn't really, like, fight. She doesn't throw truths out. She doesn't, you know, tackle with Beatrice in a real tangible way. I think that might have been why I didn't quite gel with her as much, because I was like, I want to get back to the game board, because I started to get really invested in, like, what is going on with Beatrice? She seems to have, like, a really tragic backstory, and I want to know what's happening there. Yeah, it's probably the biggest problem that I had when I was reading it initially, but it's not, you know, I'm more on board with that.
I think one of the other interesting things was that even when we were following Angie around in 1998, like, even though she was the one picking where to go and making all of these stops and connections. We didn't ever really get to see any agency out of her in doing that. It was just like, we are now here. We are now having this conversation. There wasn't ever any like, I think that this is a good idea, so we should go this way. It was just, we are now at this point. And I think like that was probably intentional. Because especially...
She's getting pushed around by fate and all that nonsense.
And it's very interesting when we get to like talking about episode 8 and how she's portrayed in
her agency that she has in episode 8.
Well, no, but like
quote unquote agency.
More how we kind of uncover that basically none of episode 4 really happened.
Well, I mean, how much of the story really did happen anyway.
But it's very much implied that like most of episode 4 was impossible to some extent. And I think that, like, it speaks a lot about why episode 4 in 1998 is written this way, in that it's more like snapshots of, you know, what could have happened or theories on what happened, than it is actually a recounting of events. That's why there's no, like, sequence. It's just, well, maybe this happened.
Maybe she went here and told to this person. This is the information. It's also very much, if we're talking, like, literary analysis here, like, it's very much Ryuki's way of giving us more hints. Like, I think in every single scene, she goes somewhere and meets a person who gives us context on something that we've already learned. A primary example of this is when she goes to the doctor and, like, he doesn't actually talk about doctor stuff. He just tells us about the PIN number and its connection to there were like 20 boxes, you know, so if anybody left the island, they would get the money that was left behind by the culprit. Which is nice. Like, it's a nice way to do it. I'm trying to think what else I wanted to try and kind of... Unless you have more to add on that.
I think probably the other thing with Angie's story before we move on from it was just mainly the fact that it was the first instance of like, oh hey, maybe the game board actually matters to people outside it.
Yes, absolutely.
Because as we were saying, it's like we'd gotten to the point, or at least I'd gotten to the point where I just didn't care about the people on the game board because I was like, whatever, they're just dying over and over again. It happens. It happens.
Yeah, no, that's so true.
But then Angie's story was like, oh, it does matter to someone.
Yes. Absolutely.
Which, you know, in just thinking about it is a very obvious conclusion to draw, but having it thrust in your face is an entirely different experience.
Yeah, it's really cool. No, definitely. I really like how Rikushi is like, hey, real life people go through instances like this, and how Rikushi frames like the forgeries as what's the word I'm looking for? Not invasion of privacy, maybe. Yeah, definitely. Like Anjay says, hey, there are these people who write these horrible stories about, because she frames, like, in the story, it's like, the witch is killing my friends, my family and friends all over and over again. But like, really, it's criticizing people who, in real life, have said, hey, this is an interesting circumstance. I don't care about the real people attached to this story. I just care that it sounds interesting. So I'm gonna write about all these horrible murders and these goats that rip an island apart and all this other nonsense. And this cool witch, she's so cool and hot, and she murdered 18 people. Like, it adds a certain level of realism, which is really cool. I really like that a lot. I really like the way that Rikushi takes something such an outlandish story idea, and even themes that I normally would just throw in the trash. Like, I think this was definitely a fear that I had, because you were approaching this as a puzzle, and like, I think you've mentioned there was a certain point in EP4 when you realize that it's like a love story. And usually when someone comes up to me and says, you should read this novel because it's a love story, I'm like, okay, whatever, move on.
Yeah.
Like, there's definitely a part of me that thought that once you realize that the story wasn't really about, like, detectiving the murders, like, that is, it's part of it, it's the hook, but it's not the point. The point is that it's about love and about relationships and all that sort of thing. I thought that you would completely reject it. Or there was certainly a possibility of it. And I would have, if this was 10 years ago, I would have been like, this is stupid.
I think one of the things that I've noticed after reading this and after watching a few things soon after, just unrelated shows, is I've noticed that I very much hate being told that a relationship exists.
Yes.
I like being shown it develop. And I think that the thing that this book does really well is that it tells you that the relationship exists, but
indirectly, right?
Indirectly, and it shows you how it matters.
Yeah, I mean, the book tells you that Beatrice and Bella are mortal enemies.
Yeah.
But then it shows you that they're falling in love and developing this relationship, right?
Yeah.
That's what's cool about it, is that it has those two sides that completely contrast.
It's very
excellent.
well done.
It's so good. Yeah, it's great. That was a moment of passion for me, sorry.
Yeah, no, I completely agree. It's definitely one of the strongest parts of the story.
Yeah.
I think I'll play the clip now.
Remember that. Confess and repent. That is the test I shall give you.
Why is he getting a different test? What's going on here?
It's a bit weird.
Where you can basically see there, like, that is the singular moment where finally the story clicks.
Yep.
It's just like, I stumble over that line there because I'm like, fuck, I get what's going on now. And then a few minutes later, I'm like, well, here's the thing about Higurashi being about friendship and Umineko being about love, which I found out about before the playthrough. But it just never really like hit home.
No, totally.
And then finally, in that moment, like with the scene on the balcony, I was just like, shit.
It's these two. It's these two right here. The protagonist and the antagonist, which is just perfect. Love it.
Yeah, to an extent, it's very tropey, but
it is. Tropes done so well.
Can be done well.
Yes. That's absolutely something that Rikushi does. As I've said, I'm pretty sure I said in the playthrough, like, Higurashi's about friendship. If someone tells me this is a story about how great friendship is, I'm like, get out of here. I'm not watching that pansy bullshit. I ain't into that. But like, you read those stories, and you're like, this really is about friendship, and I love it. Right?
No, it's absolutely fantastic. And I think that definitely episode 4, with moments like those, was absolutely key to me finally cluing into what was going on. The other one was the scene of Kyrie in the bunker where I spent like 3 minutes rambling on about why is this happening?
Flip the chessboard, dude. Or spin it. Don't flip it.
And then also, like, when I think the other really fun part in editing for me was when we got to the end of the showdown in the tea party, and Beatrice like gives up.
Yeah.
Because my head had, with the red and blue back and forth, my head had been switched back into mystery mode.
Yeah.
When Beatrice gave up, I was like, cool. Well, that was
move
fun.
on. Yeah, no, let's move on. I remember I was like, let's just let the music play, and you were like, no, I'm gonna talk, and I'm like, okay. You were very much like moving on.
Yeah, and
actually, one thing there was also a moment where you said, where I was like, actually, even earlier, I can't remember if it was I think it was in episode 4 somewhere, but you were talking about how like, well, the obvious way to like counter what I was saying here is to say that there are only 17 people on the island, but I don't think she'll do that. Surely she'll have a comeback or something, because that would just be lame if she just gave us an answer like that. And I would say like, yeah, that would be pretty lame if she just, gave you the answers. That'd be crazy. Like, that would not.
I believe my wording was that it would be too easy.
Oh,
not
too
that
easy.
It would be lame.
Yeah, close enough. Yeah, you definitely had some moments like that during where you were like, well, like, are they just gonna say that? And it's like, yeah, because the point is that she's trying to lead you to the answer.
Which is very fun when we get into episode 5, where I think I made like 6 predictions in the first episode, and I was like, these will all happen by the end of the episode, and they then happened within the next 15 minutes.
Yes, it's great. It's wonderful.
The pacing of the story is really, really turned on its head in episode 4.
Sure.
And to an extent,
in episode 4, yeah.
Well, it's starting in episode 4.
Yeah, I get you.
And to an extent, I think it's one of the weak points of episode 4 is the pacing. As we definitely brought up, like, there was that whole do it moment where I edited Palpatine over the top of over the top of Kasumi and whatnot.
Yep.
Where we were just like starting.
It was just so. I was like, I don't care about this scene, and that might be part of the problem with my like connecting with RJ, because I'm like, all the scenes that she's in are so like roundabout. Like, just tell us just to get the action, do the action thing, please.
Yeah, it's like. It's not so much that the broad scope of the story is poorly paced. I think it's very paced broadly, but moment to moment. Yep. And this is something that
shout out to EP8.
Yeah, that we definitely get into in episode 8 as well, where in broad strokes, Rikishi is really good at pacing, but moment to moment, it's very much like, here's a thing, and again, and again, and again, and again. It's like, okay, move on, Ryukishi. We get it. She's tearing pages out of a book.
Yeah, we get it. You don't need to keep tearing the pages. 2 is enough. Maybe 2. Maybe 2.5.
I think one of the other things, and I suppose we should jump into the tips for this one.
Yay, tips. What are you looking for? You got on the
this is the first time I've ever actually opened the episodes 1 to 4 on my account.
Oh, you're right. Normally we use my account. Oh, you didn't have to log in or anything. It's crazy.
Yeah. But let's.
What are you looking for?
Is the actual game board and its solution? I think in episode 7 where we get Will's solutions.
Yeah.
Episode 4 is definitely the vaguest as to how things are done.
I mean, Butler isn't there for anything, so he can't like confirm it. We can make guesses, but like, yeah, he's not there for any bit. All these people die and he's not there. We just know the order that the cousins leave the guest house, and there are some phone calls.
Yeah.
Like, it's almost certain that Kyrie died last, well, apart from the culprit, obviously. Because they have to fall down the well, quote unquote. But other than that, they could have died in pretty much any order, I think. Yeah, there's also some debate of where they were held and what they were doing for the whole day when they weren't getting murdered and all that sort of thing. But yeah, honestly, I don't really puzzle through it that much. I just say, well, it was. Well, I mean, you know what happened.
Yeah, I mean, my final theory was pretty much that it was all of the ones in the dining hall. All of the ones in the like dining hall were killed later on as basically part of the ruse, and that's why everyone went along with it. And then Goda and Kumasawa basically gave the key out, opened it up, and then the culprit killed them and locked it back up and swapped the key tag.
Yep.
Then all of the 4th through 8th, is it? I can't remember. I can't remember the numbers.
It doesn't matter.
We had a month off.
Yeah. All the other people who were killed.
Yeah. All the other people that were killed, like, basically were probably some of the first killed, actually, as they were, like, coming back from where the bunker supposedly was, although realistically they were probably just, like, waiting in the chapel.
Yeah, I mean, I think in my theory I said that they were just hanging out in the dining room. because that's where Maria's found as well. I think it's entirely possible that, well, actually, I'm trying to think time-wise. How much time do they have? Because Maria and Battler both leave the house at the same time, don't they?
Yeah.
Or Maria goes, like, just after. So I guess Maria would have to have been killed after everyone else. I guess she would have seen the bodies and just been like, oh, yay, we're all going to the Golden Land, which is death, by the way.
Yeah.
So we clarify.
It was one of the funny things, actually, about going through and editing is, like, we were going back and forth and discussing, and
yeah,
I pretty much hit on what everything was.
You
really
tried to
quickly.
you tried to overthink some things.
So hard.
You were like, but what is the meaning of Shannon? Well, I think I asked you the question, and I was like, what does it mean if, like, Shannon died and came back? And you were like, oh, but maybe it's this, or maybe it's that.
Yeah, because it was like basically every
Yeah.
time it was like, what is the Golden Land? And I kept throwing out all of these theories, and like I know that the first thing that I thought was that the Golden Land is indicative of death.
Yep.
But I thought that wasn't all that it could be.
Yep.
But it,
Well, it's I don't know. It's a cat box, right? What happens after you die? We don't know. Anything could be true.
Yeah.
Right. That's the fun part about cat boxes.
Yeah, like I mean, it's not to say that like, oh guys, my first guess was correct. I'm so smart.
Yeah,
it's more like that.
That's the obvious solution, and you think, oh, well, it can't be that.
Yeah.
Right. Yeah.
Which is definitely a thing for a lot of cases, like especially with when we see.
I mean, that's part of the psychology of the game, right? Saying, "Oh, I guessed that first, but I changed my mind," is not indicative of like, I'm so smart, because like Ryukishi puts the right answers in front of you all the time. He even has a number of extra tips that he wrote that are like explaining his design process. So like Ava back in episode 1 is like, it was the servants. And because a character is immediately saying it's the servants, you'll think, well, that can't be right. That's obviously, why would they tell me what the answer is? That's insane.
But it just is.
Yeah.
I think the other one was Sakataro in this episode.
Yay.
Was like, the moment that Sakataro appeared in the story, I was like, Rosa bought that shit.
I mean, that particular circumstance of where Sakataro came from is a little bit debated.
Yeah.
My personal theory is that, because it does say that he was created by Rosa, and she does work for a design company. So the theory that I believe to be true is that Rosa created Sakataro as a prototype for a production line of Sakataros, basically. And that's what we see in EP4 when we go to the boat shed, or wherever it is that we see them.
That's interesting. I like that.
Yeah, that's what I think's going on there. It doesn't look like the heart.
But yeah, like when Sakataro died and then was revived later, I was like, well, it's easy. There are more than one of him.
Yeah.
And the Red Truth's like, but Rosa made him just for Maria, and I'm like, that's. Well, yeah, she's like, here, Maria, that's Sakataro. This is your Sakataro, and that's like the creation story or whatever. Like, I like your idea. I think it's
much more likely that she hand stitched him and then was like, hey, this is my design. My kid loves this thing. We should make more of him. And then she died, but someone else was like, I'll just take that idea.
Yeah.
That's what I think happened. But, we don't know, and that's part of it.
We don't know, but I think that it's just another case of me definitely overthinking things.
Yep.
Because, like, I'm like, well, there's more than one Sakataro, but maybe it's this thing, or maybe there's this bullshit.
Also, I like that it even says, you might even say he's a second Lady Maria and irreplaceable, like, second Lady Maria. And the working theory is that she just puppets him and, like, uses her voice for his mouth. Like, literally just a second Maria, quote unquote.
Yeah.
It's great. I love it. Oh, rip Ava.
Yeah, and then, like, the other thing that I didn't notice so much with the first time through when we were doing things, but definitely when I was wrapping things up before a big write-up for the end of episode 5, is that everyone that got, quote-unquote, staked in this episode, none of them actually had stakes in them for the most part. It was just kind of like thrown around near the crime scene.
Yep. Someone didn't feel like throwing stakes, going to all the effort at the end. It's almost like they got disheartened.
Yeah.
Just wanted to be done with it.
Yeah, it was a detail I really didn't notice the first time through, but when I was going back through during episode 5, I was like, oh.
Yeah, it's great. Characterization. It's wonderful.
And that's one of the other really strong things about the story, particularly in this episode, I think, is just indirect characterization.
Yes. There's a lot of that. Like, I really like that, because the story obviously trains you to, like, look for clues and figure out how people might have been killed based on certain things. But then the real challenge is saying, well, is this clue actually a clue to the murder? Like, if it's irrelevant to the, like, because I don't know how much you could learn about, like, how the murder was carried out based on the fact that the stake is next to the body, not next to it, except in episode 2. But, like, can we learn something else that the author is trying to tell us? And, yeah, indirect characterization. Like, why are they not in the body? Like, they've always been very faithfully sticking out of the corpses, looking grotesque. And just this one time, like, they're just all lying there, lazily scattered about. It's wonderful. Yeah. Well, Nacho.
And I suppose the other thing I wanted to talk about was these lovely people, which still no sprites.
I know. I don't think they ever will. Unless I can.
Unless you can bribe.
I was gonna say bribe Usagi to make some. But we'll see. We'll see what I can do. Probably not. They take a lot of effort to make, from what I understand. You have to make like there were like 1,000 different poses made for like episodes 1 to 4, and even more for Chiro, and like it's insane. It's a lot of work. Shout out to Usagi. But yeah, I mean, what do you want to talk about these guys? They appear for like 1 or 2 scenes and then disappear forever. Especially this guy. Literally the least important character in anything. He barely exists.
The least important named character.
I guess so. But that's the thing, right? Why give him a sprite, and why not just have no sprite, I guess?
Yeah, that was what I wanted to talk about. It's like, why did these characters actually get names and identities in this episode? Because, like, Kawabata supposedly appeared in episode 1. We just never saw his sprite nor name.
Yep.
Like, Itsuki appears again in episode 8, but
like, that doesn't seem planned, if I'm being real. And yeah, no, everybody else says, well, Kawabata appears a little bit in EP8, but yeah, that's only right at the end, if you feel like seeing what he does. But yeah,
it's
I don't
like,
know.
It's just interesting, like, of all of the choices and design decisions in this episode, I can't figure out why really these characters needed full names and sprites.
I mean, they all have well, except for the boat, well, actually, no, except for Suki and the boat captain. I shouldn't say that then. Well, I guess they're all, connected to the family, except for Itsuki. Like,
yeah. It's more of that, like, especially when we get into, I think it was episode 5 or 6, but where we get into, like, scenes where we're going back to, like, Rudolph's business and he's talking with a board of directors.
Yeah.
And they just display them all as characters off screen and give them kind of, like, vague identities.
He might have been trialing, like, in his head, he was like, well, we're 4 episodes in, and I feel like I could trial some, like, more generic designs.
Yeah.
And see if people gel, or if anybody's like, oh, hey, I really like that people are using the sprites. That's my immediate thought from his side of things. But you're right, like, they aren't particularly interesting characters. The designs are much more generic than the others. And I don't know. They're okay.
Yeah, like, all of those scenes could have been done just by saying Nanjo's son and then not showing anything, but they decided to show it anyway.
Yep.
It's very strange. I do like the idea that it was kind of trialing, introducing future characters and seeing, because especially as I was saying where we get into later episodes with, like, Rudolph's company or whatever, it's like, should I show all of these random shit-kicker businessmen?
Yeah, I mean, it'll just get cluttered, right?
Yeah. But at the same time, it's also very strange in that pretty much everyone else, like, actually majorly factors in some way. Later on, these are, like...
They're not even connected to each other. They don't have, like, lines to show that they're, like, important to someone. They're just there.
Except Kawabata.
Except Kawabata, who is the most important character in the entire story.
He is one of the first 20 characters introduced in the story.
It's true. He is a dreamboat.
He might be introduced before Beatrice.
I think he probably is.
No, because we get the whole spiel with Kinzo in the study
Oh,
first.
you're absolutely correct.
Yeah.
He talks about Beatrice, because of course he does.
Yeah.
He's a fucking
so he is the 20th character introduced.
Yeah, the 20th person on the island.
Maybe.
Of which there are only 16.
That's terrifying.
Yeah. I don't know, do you have any more theories about why there might be people who have sprites who are basically insignificant?
I mean, you can sit here and plot out like what was appealing about these ones. I think probably the main thing that I'd say is that it was kind of trying to do the same thing with Angie, where it's like, oh hey, there are actually people that care about what's happened. But
nobody cared about the others.
But even then, neither of these two really seemed to actually care. They kind of like moved on.
Yeah, their characters are written as well. Yeah, I mean that's one thing you could say about them is that like they kind of contrast Angie in terms of Angie's like, oh, I really care about this, and he's just like, oh, well, is it my grandmother? Shit, I can't remember. No, it's his mother. He's like, oh, my mother died, and I got this letter, and I moved on. Like, there's kind of a contrast there, but you're right. Like, why make a sprite for him if that's always going to be there for? Yeah, I don't know. What are you looking for?
Then we have all of this. I think this set of tips, we didn't get like any through the game. These all appeared after we'd finished.
Yep.
I think these ones are all really fun because to an extent it kind of tells you a lot about everything that Chiro is about to do to you.
Yep.
It tells you everything that kind of is in the nature of the
characters,
the meta characters that we meet, and how they interact with the game. Particularly with the Voyages one, I think perhaps this one probably makes more sense, especially if you've read Higurashi and understand where Burn came from.
Maybe.
Which is something you've mentioned a few times. But it's like, you know, even when we get into the fragment ocean and things like that, like, especially when we get into episode 5 and we literally find ourselves drifting in the sea of fragments, which is one of the things that tipped me off to later theories.
Yep.
Like, it's another circumstance of Ryukishi just showing you things straight away, and then contextualizing why they're important later.
Yeah, this is definitely a primer for Chiro in a sense.
And I think that one of the things that I really like about the tips for this episode is that, you know, all of the tips in like episodes 1 to 3 are all, for the most part, like, here's the Imperial Sisters chest guard.
I mean, if we put it in the context of who might be writing these tips, it makes a lot of sense, right?
Speak on that.
Shout out to EP7. You want to talk about that a little bit?
I want you to talk about this because I'm not entirely following.
So, we know from the way that episode 7 is written that Sayo, the author, the culprit, however you want to refer to them, they write all this out. They have literally drawn and designed Sakataro, Lady Maria's dress, the character of Beatrice, who goes through several design iterations, mind you. I imagine these tips on like these are the notes on the Chester sisters. Literally like an extra note in a message bottle that's just been like tacked on the side that they wrote. Like I could entirely imagine that all of these tips were, well, at least the ones that aren't written, you know, after the murders, were written by Sayo. I definitely can see that as being a thing. Like, they're technically subordinates to the Dragon King, but because of a long relationship, and then they like cross out, you know, Dragon King and writing Dragon Prince, and then they think, well, the Dragon Prince doesn't sound quite as official, so we go Dragon King. Like, these are the specifications of the Chester longbows.
Yeah, they're character notes.
Yeah.
I mean, that's kind of how I've been reading them the whole way since the beginning, is that they are like, they are author's notes about decisions. Like, you know...
Yeah, no.
It's like, especially with this one where it holds 4+1 rounds, and it's like the last thing and it's its own little point.
Yep.
It's like, you know, when you're going through and you're like, shit, how many rounds is this gun fired? Flip back to my notes, okay, we got 4+1, they've shot off this many rounds.
That's the important bit. Yeah, I mean, I very much see all of this as like, well, I've just written this big-ass story, what are the notes that I need to remember about it, you know, or what's important to the reader? And obviously Ryukishi is doing that, but in the story, Sayo is doing that.
Yeah, and I think, but one of the things I like about episode 4 is that this is the first one where we really get something different and we just get context for like all of these things and how they work.
Yep.
And, you know, we can talk about how it indicates the change in author that I was theorizing through most of episode 4. And we can talk about, like, you know, was this from the original culprit or was this from the later authors?
Yeah. It's a question. It's a great question.
But I do like how much these tips in particular say about what is about to happen in the story without ever really just giving it away.
Yep.
Like, even regarding creators.
Yeah.
like, even though it says, you know, which of Origins Maria is a chosen girl fated to become a creator, she dies, but then we do get a creator witch later on.
Definitely the foreshadowing there, when I was reading, I was like, oh, so is Maria going to become a creator somehow? Like, is that where that's going? But no, they just introduce a creator, or two creators.
Yeah, and then all voyages fear the destination of their own journeys is becoming a creator. It gets particularly interesting when we start to see interactions between voyages and creators later on in the story.
It's good
and
stuff there.
having these tips really, like, it never feels necessary to remember these things when you're reading the story, but it's good detail to have, and I think that that's one of the strong parts of how these tips are set up, which is what I was saying, is that, you know, in episode 1 it tells you what you need to know about the mystery, in episode 2 it tells you a little bit about, you know, how the magic's working. In episode 3, it tells you a little bit about the characterization of where all these magical characters are coming from in the episode where you're first starting to get hints of like, oh, hey, Vigilia is Kumasawa, and Bronove is Ronove. I keep doing that. I keep saying Bronove is Ronove.
Bronove is Ronove?
Yeah.
I mean, it's true, but...
It is true.
You could say it in red, but it would not be very helpful.
It would not be very helpful. I don't know, I keep doing that in when I'm editing as well. I'm like, oh god, I said it again. Here I go again.
Yay.
But, But either way, like, I think that definitely one of the strong things I've noticed in editing, which is what this is about, is how well set out the tips are. Especially when we get to the end of, like, well, except for the epitaph or whatnot.
Except for the epitaph, that's fine.
Which is interesting. I do wonder why the epitaph repeats itself when you actually just have all of them that you could scroll through here.
No. I mean, maybe they're designed to be, like, released separately originally. That's how Higurashi was, I think.
No, because this one was released where you got episode 1, and then if you bought 2, you got 1 and 2, and then if you got 3, you got 1, 2, and 3.
Is that how it was released originally?
Yes.
Oh, that's interesting. I thought they released individually, because that's how Higurashi was released, I believe. It was literally different programs. There is, well, the PS3 has a compilation of them, but the original product is not. But anyway, yeah.
But yeah, I think that it's definitely one of the things I've noticed in editing is how strongly set out the tips are. And also even going back to the characters.
How they build.
Although we don't spend much time looking at it, especially with all of these notes and looking about, like, you know, who's making comments, what perspective these are written from.
Yep.
It's actually like...
The witch, quote unquote.
Even though we have been reading all of these tips with the voices of the characters that they're of. I think there's a lot of times where it's very clear who it actually is. Speaking. And it also does speak of things like what the game board was trying to do. Like a lot of the tips like this one where the witnesses don't believe she was killed with a gun. It very much is like, oh, look, here's the trick. And dropping little hints here and there that don't necessarily, again, give it away. So yeah, I don't know if... I suppose the other thing I want to talk about is episode 4's music.
It's amazing.
It is amazing.
Victim of Propiciatoria? Shit, it's Italian. That one, Mortal Stampede, Revolts, all those action scenes are great, and obviously there's Dreamer and Discharger. I'm trying to think if there's any, like, quieter tracks that are, like, excellent, that just show up in EP4.
I can't remember I mean, all of the themes...
Rhythm something. Rhythm Changer?
Rhythm Changer, yeah.
Rhythm Changer.
That's really introduced in episode 3, though.
But it's kind of Anjay's thing, for the most part.
I don't...
If that's the song I'm thinking of, no?
I don't think you're thinking of the right one, because that is definitely... because it was...
There's one song that's introduced for Anjay for like, a lot of her scenes. I don't remember what it's called then.
I know one of the main ones that Angie has is like Apathy or whatever.
Apathy is good.
But yeah, that's definitely one of the things about episode 4 soundtrack I really like is actually the chill tracks. Like, I know you went through and listed like his all the hype
bombastic tracks. That's what I'm about.
Which, yeah, normally the bombastic tracks is very much my jam.
But Stampede though, them kicks.
But like, there was just something really strong about like how emotive and simple all of the tracks, particularly for Angie's story, were. I believe I made a list of them.
Oh, you're prepared.
I did.
Yeah.
Though I made the list ages ago.
Oh my god.
Yeah, Cage Take 3, Apathy, Haze, Shinpi no Mori, Wingless, and Kuon or whatever.
Wait, what's the second last one? Wingless, yeah, Wingless is excellent.
Those ones, I don't know if this is the first time they appear in the story, but they definitely make the most appearances in the story at this point. And I think that they do a very good job of doing what the game normally doesn't do. which is normally the game throws in music that doesn't really fit scenes to kind of tell you what's going on a broader scope here.
Yep.
But I think the fact that episode 4 does display songs that are very straightforward to what's going on in the scenes, the fact that this is the outlier case for that happening really hammers home that the message is straightforward in episode 4. Like, you know, through a lot of episodes 1 to 3, it was things like we'd be playing really creepy tracks when everyone's just discussing in the parlor. It's like, why is this so creepy?
Yep.
But then when we get to episode 4, it's like, oh, this is a sad scene and there's sad music.
Yep. Straightforward. It's chill.
And when we look at what episode 4 says, particularly about the nature of magic, which took me so long to get around to.
Yes. Good shit.
And this is the thing I kind of want to close this one on, is that, like, episode 4 is just very straightforward in the story that it tells. Like, especially with things like when, you know, Angie destroys the stakes and they're telling, like, no, we can't, we actually can't do anything.
Unless you can do it, we cannot do it.
And,
it's so good.
And, like, you know, when we're talking with Maria's diary at the start, and I'm like, well, maybe it's this thing and maybe it's that thing, but really, it was just...
a diary.
Yeah, it was just
telling
a diary
stories.
that she was reading. I was like, what trick is Ryukishi trying to play on us here?
I know.
And editing this episode has been fucking agonizing. I have not...
Yeah, this was definitely the episode that I felt would make or break the playthrough as I was recording it, because I was like, it is entirely possible that you will completely reject everything that you're being shown here, and this will collapse. But we seem to have been okay. Watch on to find out, of course. Maybe.
Yeah, like, I think it took way longer than necessary for it to happen in this, because I was fighting it for so long. I was like, there's tricks here, what's happening? But, especially in editing, and that's why I brought up the music, is in editing, I noticed like, oh hey, the music just matches the scene, and that's unusual, and the story is just very straightforward.
Yep.
And I think that, particularly with this being a sound novel, that is one of the best examples of how this game is a sound novel more than a visual novel. In that you can tell so much about what aspect of the story is being told. In that it's like, here is a sad scene with sad music, thus it's kind of like more...
super sad.
Yeah, it's super sad, plus it also tends to be more trustworthy, because it's not like there's an underlying...
Yeah, you're absolutely correct.
...hidden thing going on here, because, you know, when we have scenes like in the parlor where everyone needs a lot of money right now, it's just like, you know, siblings arguing. It's like, I need money and I need money, but then there's like this really quiet piano tone.
Absolutely. If there's a disconnect between the music and what you're seeing on screen, you're going to be on edge.
Yeah.
But when it matches up perfectly, you're more likely to trust it. And this is also prevalent during the fight scenes, the many fight scenes towards the end of this chapter, where like there are heroic things being done. Shout out to loser flags. And there's just this crazy epic music in the background.
Yeah.
Like, you're completely on board with it. Despite probably knowing by this point in the novel that it is all a narrative that's being told to you and that it is unreliable, you want to see these characters succeed because of how well all of that is written and how it sounds great. Like, you want to be on board with these characters. You want them to live, even if you know they can't.
Yeah.
And that, to me, is what's so incredibly special about this story.
I think the other thing about that, though, is especially when we get into the final red and blue showdown at the end of this episode.
Yes.
Is like there's two tracks that play. The first one is Dream End Discharger, which is just fantastic track.
Wonderful track.
I can't remember the name of the second one.
You talking about the one with vocals over the credits, or are you talking about another track?
The second half of the fight scene.
Man, I'm trying to remember. It's not Resurrected Replayer. That's a Churu track.
Either way, I'll drop the track in the background here. But I think the interesting thing about the two halves of that fight is, you know, the first one is dramatic. It has like the kind of sadder undertones of Dream End Discharger, which kind of like foreshadows what's gonna happen. But then when we get the music switch, it goes from being like back and forth, like, suck on this bitch, suck on that fella. The second half of the fight where the music changes and the music kind of starts to match the more like tense tone of the fight, we really start to see the like actual undertones of what's happening here before we get to that conclusion of Beatrice being held aloft on the blue spikes. It's just great. I love it.
Can we, I think I'll link to the description or on screen somewhere. There's a fan-made animation using I believe it's the PS3 voices, but it is that final bit when Beatrice is up on the spikes and she's like crying, and I very much tried to emulate it when I did the voice. And Battler is just looking depressed down at the ground, like, is this it? Like, is this the end? And then it ends with watashi wa dare, or who am I? And she like lights up in gold and disappears. Yeah, it's a really just excellent animation. Highly recommend checking it out. It's like 7 minutes long, but it's, I don't know, the ending of the first tea party for me is like the emotional climax of everything that we've gone through since the very introduction of Beatrice. But yeah, no, I'm totally with you. I love that fight. I love how it turns from like this almost enjoyable romp, especially when Kinzo turns into a giant dragon, and then Battler just has to take him down. It turns into a very personal conflict.
Yeah.
It loses all of its splendor and its grandeur. All of the like, and especially this is also done through the monologue of Beatrice, which is something we haven't had before. Like we go from this like, I am the great witch, and she's very proud and haughty, to just I just want it to end. Like you see her human side really shine through in that moment. It becomes two people talking in this field of roses. And that's what's so special about it. And that's why I fucking love Umineko, because it turns the simplest things to the most important.
That it does.
Yes!
My goodness.
Let's reread it. Let's just reread it, guys. Let's just go through that journey again. Yes. It has to be done.
Alright.
Alright.
Well, I don't know if I have anything more to say. For those of you that are watching through concurrent with the playthrough, enjoy episode 5, which will start soon.
Yay!
For those of you that are coming back after the end, welcome.
Yay!
I hope you've enjoyed.
Yay!
On to cheer.
Cheer time! Get ready for this shit. It's gonna be hype! I just can't wait for a new character to arrive. I'm sure she'll be nice and pleasant. And there'll be no annoying voices attached to her.
What do you think, everyone?